Morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Before I begin, I would just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land where I currently am, the Gammarega people, and pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I'd like you to shut your eyes and think about a time when you were last courageous. Just picture that moment when you had courage and you were brave. You're being courageous right now, joining us today. But that moment, it could have been yesterday, last week, last month. What was it that made that moment courageous? What was the difference in you? And what impact did your courage have on you and those around you? Eyes open right now because I'd love you to remember that moment, but I want you to join me in an act of courage. And I do keynote speaking. I'm a founder of a not-for-profit involved in boxing. So in boxing, we have to keep our guard up. I'd like to invite you to join me in keeping your guard up by putting your elbows in your ribs, fists by your cheek, and just having your head down slightly. Now, when you keep your guard up in boxing, it's great because it blocks those jabs and blocks those crosses. But in life, keeping your guard up is hard to do. Can you imagine going to a networking event where you're like this? Hello, my name is Martin. I'm from Sydney. Hello, my name is Ali. I'm in Tasmania. It just wouldn't be the same. That hands down, faces up, please. Now, when you're courageous and you're not on guard, people see you're more open, you're brave, you're more confident. It just establishes the know, like, and trust which are needed in everyday life of personal relationships, of business relationships. People see that confidence in you and are more likely to support you. Now, I define taking ownership of fear, venturing forward with confidence and resilience. And I'm going to share a story when I needed to be my definition of courage and live through my worst fear to actually be with you today. I'm going to take you back to 2006. My husband and I went to the UK to visit my family. It's to introduce my husband to the family. The days of no social media, when it worked much better when we didn't have Facebook and Instagram. But what happened is I had gallstones blocking my liver. And what was supposed to be a 2 week stay ended up being a 3 month stay. Now, I was admitted to hospital because I had jaundice and I was very sick with a blocked liver and had a procedure to try and remove the blockage, but that procedure went wrong. And what happened is dye seeped into my pancreas and I developed severe acute pancreatitis and I had a collapsed lung. Now, I was taken to an intensive care and I was really struggling to breathe. I remember asking one of the consultants, I think we're going to need to place you on a ventilator. And he agreed. Now, I needed to be courageous at that moment because one of my final memories of before my first coma was, what if I don't wake up? I looked to the right and saw my mum having that look that mums have. She was being courageous at that moment. And that helped me through a difficult challenge. I was in my first coma for about a week. And one thing I remember are the dreams which I call living nightmares. And the nurses could see I was in distress and played some music. It's the music with a heart being played, and I can't describe it. When I hear it, I freeze. Now, when they woke me up from my second coma, they thought I was improving, but then I started deteriorating rapidly because I developed sepsis, blood poisoning, and I had the most severe form, which is septic shock. Now, the only way of saving my life was actually going through my worst fear, which has always been a tracheotomy. I apparently told the doctors they couldn't perform the tracheotomy, but my family rightfully overruled me. Now, I remember when the consultant came over and told me they needed to perform the tracheotomy. At that point, I'm struggling to breathe and thinking I'm going to die. And I'm scared of going back in that induced coma. But I focused on the courage of the surgeon and the nurses performing the procedure. And I was immobilized, and it felt like a python coiling itself around your body. But a python is your friend, it's holding you tight, but giving you courage. And I felt the pressure on my neck as a tracheotomy was performed. I was back in the coma for a week, and those dreams are far worse. Now, when I woke up, I felt the pressure on my neck, the tracheotomy scar right there. And this was my voice because the tracheotomy, which was life-saving, damaged my vocal cords. It took me almost a year to get my voice back, learning to speak to my diaphragm. Can you imagine the courage of talking like this all the time, to speaking like this? Now, courage was needed a few months later, back in Australia. I'd had the major surgery, but I wasn't recovering. I was in hospital about 4 times. And on the fourth admission, an astute doctor diagnosed a rare autoimmune condition called Addison's disease. It's what JFK had. It was the presidential disease, as it's known as. Now, Addison's disease is a bit similar to type 1 diabetes. My body doesn't produce cortisol. Now, cortisol is your body's stress-producing hormone. In the event of a psychological threat, major infection, your cortisol levels increase. Mine don't. I can describe it. Imagine a Qantas flight leaving Sydney right now, going all the way to Florida, but it only has enough fuel for 2 hours to go see Ali in Tasmania. It wouldn't be able to make it all the way. So I've learned how to adapt to the situation, taking ownership of fear, learning to accept the condition, moving forward with confidence, learning more about the condition, how it can save my life and stay healthy, and being resilient with those challenges. Now, I've been in hospital over 70 times over the last 19 years. I've had 4 major surgeries. Owning the fear and accepting what happens and being resilient has helped the recovery and trying to lead as meaningful life as possible. Now, there are 4 steps of courage, and I call it courage at your own pace, because some people can be courageous in any moment, and some people, they need time. But when you start developing courage, it becomes a sustainable habit. Now, the first step of courage, the P, it stands for purpose. Your purpose, it's your inner fire, it's that catalyst, it's that drive to do something. It's what fuels your energy and your emotions. Remember, our thoughts lead to our emotions and our actions. Now, my purpose I discovered after almost dying from Addison's disease. End of 2017, I collapsed at home and rushed to the local hospital. My pulse was below 40. The triage nurse decided to send me straight into the resuscitation section of emergency, the ICU section. It reminded me of being in ICU. And the doctors are fighting to save my life. And it takes 20 times my normal cortisone dose to stabilize me. But that experience brought back the painful memories of the comas, particularly the dreams. And what happened is I underwent self-defense training and I started boxing training. And it helped me deal with the PTSD and take ownership of the fear. Now, people used to joke Martin could never punch out of his way out of a paper bag. Within 2 months, people could see I could jab, cross, hook, uppercut. People were asking me how your boxing training was going. I was cheekily calling myself the future world gay boxing champion. I wanted to win gold for Australia at the 2022 Gay Games in Hong Kong. But I found that boxing wasn't offered by the Games. So I had one of those silly ideas. Why don't I solve the problem of homophobia in combat sports and create the world's first LGBTQ boxing competition? I had an idea called the World Gay Boxing Championships. I communicated my purpose right over the world. I was interviewed by CNN, The Guardian, ABC News. People were offering to help. I had a board who people wanted to create a not-for-profit. I started WGBC in my bedroom during lockdown in 2020. So my purpose was communicated and it led to action because that's what the A stands for. It's action. It's really taking that to the next level. It's experimenting. It's learning from mistakes. It's improving as you go along the way. Now, for somebody who'd never organized a boxing competition, what did I need to do? I need action to form relationships. So I shared my vision with the board of Boxing Australia. Within 2 weeks, they'd issued a press release, which was covered by The Guardian. They provide all of the institutional support for the judges and referees, mentoring and guidance to organize the world's first LGBTQ boxing competition, which included trans boxers. I took action to solve the problem of transphobia, enabling a trans man to safely compete and win a world title. You think what's happening in the world today? It's always the trans communities that are the front line, but always my actions solve the problem. Now, the next step is C, which is for confidence. So after 2 or 3 years of planning, I had the confidence to deliver a world first. The 2 years ago, during Sydney World Pride, history happened. The world's first boxing competition for the LGBTQ plus community, which was sanctioned by Boxing Australia, took place. People who've maybe doubted this couldn't be done before, I proved it could be done. And that just fueled more confidence, not just in me, but the boxers, the participants, the fans. They saw how their contributions helped solve a major problem. It created a courage cascade. One person being courageous is infectious. Not delivering the first championship, but conversations with people in Chicago who said, why don't you hold your next event here? And that leads to the final step of courage, which is excellence. And it's about striving for good standards, but not allowing perfection to stop you achieving greatness. It's refining, it's having that grit and determination, showing your leadership, being the courageous inspiration for others, that courage cascade. So after a year of conversation, held a boxing exhibition. The A was action, Leslie. Had a boxing competition in Chicago. Now we contacted the Chicago Cubs. And my publicist had an email. Would Martin like to throw the ceremonial opening pitch at the Chicago Cubs? I'd never been to a baseball game before. This is the baseball I used to throw at Wrigley Field. In the background is masking the baseball. But I threw a baseball in a crowd of about 10,000 people, 1 million audience online. And the baseball, it grew, and it seemed to land closer to Sydney and Tasmania than it did the base plate. But it was fun. It was that moment. The announcer says, this is your pitch. This is your moment. This is my moment to be courageous. My claim to fame is Conor McGregor, who I don't particularly like. He's thrown the first pitch at Wrigley Field, and I could throw a baseball better than Conor McGregor. So a gay guy with sometimes yellow hair can throw a baseball than Conor McGregor. That's my little claim to fame. But it was those 4 sections: the passion, the action, leading to confidence and excellence. Now, when you closed your eyes, I asked you to think of a time when you were being courageous. Because there's a tip for you, there's a strategy which I call the courage bank. When you go for a job interview, they say, tell me a time when you did something. How have you overcome a challenge? And it's that style, that situation, task, action, result. You know, you're the star of your own story. But think of a fear that you have, a challenge that you have. How can you apply the wisdom from the times when you've been courageous? Think of learning to ride the bike. You have training wheels and stabilizers, first of all. And there's that time when you take the stabilizers off and you start pedaling. And you fall over, you get back up, and you start pedaling. Within a few weeks, you're in the playground, you're in the backyard cycling, you're going on bike rides with mates. As you get older, you're wearing a bicycle helmet and you're cycling to work. You had the courage to do that. You've taken your purpose of riding a bike, action getting on the bike, confidence picking yourself up when you fall over, and the excellence being able to ride the bike in the playground and going on a bike ride with your mates. That's what courage is all about. It's about being a habit. Now, I was courageous when I was about 8 years old, and involved my brother embarrassing mum. We took a train to a larger city to visit a shopping centre. And as we were walking around, we went into a reject shop and there was a whoopee cushion. I asked mum if I could buy the whoopee cushion, and she said no. My mum was doing some clothes shopping later and said to my brother and I, all right, off you go, you can go and spend half an hour by yourself. So what did we do? We went straight back to the reject shop and bought the whoopee cushion. The plan was to blow the whoopee cushion up and put it behind mum on the trade line home. Now, talk about the whoopee cushion, because when you listen, when you breathe, are you listening? You take a breath, you say something. You see how we breathe, what we listen to, what we say has an impact. It can have a courageous impact. Now, it ended up that I was sitting next to mum on the train. So the train, it's a packed carriage, it's a big commuter train going to the big cities. And there are two soldiers sitting beside us. My brother opens up the whoopee cushion, blows into it, and it makes that noise. And mum is embarrassed. She's telling him off. Now the two soldiers know what's going on, and they go, "We can't smell anything," and then they burst out laughing. And it's that moment, you see, has caused the impact. It's caused the moment of humor. It's caused the moment of courage. But I'm not asking you to go. I'm asking you, listen with courage when you take a breath, when you hail, when you talk. Be courageous in what you say in your actions. When you sound more confident when you're speaking, it has a greater impact than when you sound a little bit nervous and you're like here. See, when your guard is down, people see the confidence in you. They see how you're being courageous. They see how you're inspiring them. They see those 4 steps: purpose, action, confidence, and excellence. Now, I'd like you to be courageous one more time and get back in that boxing stance. Now, I'd like you to start clapping. I want you to do this, because that is the beat to We Will Rock You. And you absolutely rock. Now, We Will Rock You is obviously one of the famous tracks from Queen. My favorite track of Queen is We Are the Champions. And you are absolute champions. And I have a question for you. When is the next time you will be courageous?